Welcome in, everybody. This is your self-care staffing for Friday, April 24th, 2020. I am Lou Pascal. I'm a school social worker in the Manchester City Schools in Manchester, Tennessee. And today I want us to talk about the topic of self-care fails. Now, I'm a social worker and I try to help people with their choices and their mindset. So I want to say, you have self-care fails. You are not a failure at self-care. So it's a safe space. We can talk about it. You have self-care fails. You are not a failure at self-care. So self-care fails. Times when you were trying to take care of yourself, but something went awry. Or you just hadn't really thought about some of the things that you were doing and how they were impacting your life. So those are kind of some ways to think about what a self-care fail might be. So I thought about what my personal self-care fails have been, and I came up with several. The first one is negative self-talk. And that can be even like things that actually come out of your mouth, not just what you tell yourself in your mind, but when people give you a compliment and if you can't ever accept it, if you've got to say, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal, or you've got to do something to kind of brush it off, or self-deprecating humor. We all like to laugh and we all do funny things from time to time, and a measure of that can be okay, but if you're always making fun of yourself, that might be something you want to think about, and that might be a self-care fail for you. And especially if it's like really mean-spirited. If you're just kind of lighthearted, oh, I'm so, scatterbrained, or, something like that, that might be one thing. But if it's very mean-spirited and sharp against yourself, that might be something that you want to think about. And also, just think about the things that are coming out of your mouth. There's some sort of phenomenon, I believe, where when we hear it with our own voice, it somehow sounds like a whole lot more plausible, correct, whatever. So in that sense, I just would encourage you to think about the things that you're saying about yourself, because that can get into your mind. And if it's very negative, that's probably not in your best interest. Another one is refusing to let other people help me. We talked about this in a video maybe a couple of days ago about not being able to receive, and I have had a hard time with that in my life. I am in a helping profession, and I am often in the position of helping other people, and when it comes time for me to accept help, it's difficult. So that is a self-care fail for me sometimes, is not being able to receive help and refusing to let other people help me. Another one is comparing myself to others. Comparing myself to others. And we had a whole video about comparison. That can happen a lot on social media. Someone else's life looks so fantastic and you just kind of know everything that's going wrong with yours. And one of these things is not like the other, as they say. So comparison may be a self-care fail for you, especially if it leaves you always feeling like you don't quite measure up to someone else or measure up to your ideal. Another one is not listening to my gut, not listening to my intuition. And there have been times that I was trying to make a decision, and like in my gut, I knew it wasn't the right decision, but I did all these mental gymnastics for just hours and hours trying to somehow fit myself in whatever box I thought I needed to get into. And the older I get, the more that I more quickly come to realizing that if I'm really having to kind of come up with all this rationale in my mind of why that's the right choice, it might not be the thing to do. There was a song, and I can't remember who sings it, but it's Tanya Tucker. It's Tanya Tucker. If it don't come easy, you got to let it go. So if if there's some sort of decision that you're trying to make and it looks absolutely correct on paper, but you're having all these like deliberations in your mind trying to get yourself to acceptance, then that might not be the thing for you. So, not listening to my gut or my intuition. That's another one. And the last one for me is not taking risks and not betting on myself. And I am very risk averse. There was some movie one time and she said, I'm a safety girl. And that's a good description for me. I am risk averse. And so taking risks is difficult for me sometimes. However, there are things in life that you are not going to get to unless you take a risk. And especially when it involves believing in yourself, betting on yourself to make something happen. That's a self-care fail for me sometimes, is not taking that chance, taking that risk that I'm going to be able to come through on that particular situation. So those are some self-care fails that I have experienced. So here's your self-care check-in question. Well, there's two today. What is one example of a self-care fail in your life? And what did you learn from it about not letting it happen again? So what is one example of a self-care fail in your life? And what did you learn from it about not letting it happen again? So here's our quote. Keeping these videos short the past couple of days. The quote is, failure cannot cope with persistence. Now, yesterday we talked about quitting and how sometimes it's okay to quit. So let me qualify that. This is a quote about perseverance. Really, the message is to persist with your self-care efforts, even though you have self-care failures sometimes. So if you decide to continue with something, if you decide against quitting, you can think about failure cannot cope with persistence. And that was Napoleon Hill from the book Think and Grow Rich. So, what I'm going to leave with you today, the song is going to be Taylor Swift, Shake It Off, just because it's all about letting those things that are bothering you, maybe your self-care fails, maybe things other people are saying, things other people are doing, just letting those things roll off your back. Keep on trucking. Shake it off. It's a fun song. Taylor Swift. Something funny. I'm bringing you another children's book today. This is The Story of Ferdinand by Monroe Leaf. And the reason that I like this is it's all about Ferdinand really, I guess, listening to his gut, listening to his intuition, knowing who he is, and not letting himself be talked into something, convinced of something, not comparing himself to other people, any of that stuff to get him in a situation that he doesn't need to be in. So you may have seen this, but let me show it a little bit closer. The Story of Ferdinand by Monroe Leaf. It is a really wonderful story about Ferdinand being who Ferdinand is. So, if all hearts and minds are clear, I appreciate y'all watching this, and I will see you back here on Monday with another self-care staffing.